So, Nate, there's been some developments in Japan. Have you heard about this? Have you seen about this?
I've heard that
So
the
in Japan,
mythical far right is here.
oh yeah, the far right, the scourge, the spectre of the far right. It goes as far as Japan, as far as Nippon.
Oh dear.
So yeah, well, Japan has suffered in the last couple of years from a liberal government. They had an election the other day, and they took a turn for the hard right, the far right. But yeah, so a little bit of background. So in Japan, they've got the LDP. It's a Liberal Democrat Party, but they're not Lib Dems as Brits might know, i.e., sort of super left, sort of so far left that they're not really Democrats anymore. It's not that exactly, but as the name suggests, they were liberal and on and off. Well, not on and off, but in various ways, in various incarnations. They've been in power ever since World War II. After America won, they gave Japan a constitution. They told them, "This is your constitution now," and ever since then, it's been the same. It's been the same party, whether it be in coalition or not, has ruled. But sometimes they've been like reasonably conservative. I mean, that Abe chap, if you remember him, he got assassinated a few years back. He was considered much more on the right wing of the LDP. But then since him, they've had a couple of prime ministers who have been super globalist, like full blown LGBTQ, open borders. Yeah, the full package. And as you can imagine, the Japanese have noticed that they committed the cardinal sin of noticing that they've had hundreds of thousands of foreign people invade their country, which they're not used to. They've had nothing like our levels of immigration. And of course, historically, Japan has been very isolationist. I'm talking about before World War II and in the centuries before, sort of crazily isolationist in centuries past. So they're not used to it. A million new people over the past few years, and they've noticed. So it's triggered a couple of new right-leaning parties in Japan, and they're of course they're not crazy far right. They're just like Japan first sort of stuff, sort of reform type, MAGA type. Let's at least pretend to act in the interests of the natives, that sort of thing. One of the main parties, there's two really, a conservative party, but the Senseito party, which roughly translates to do it yourself. And it's quite a new party. It only began in 2020. It was an old LDP chap leading it. And and their policies are, let's not flood our country with foreign people.
Pretty reasonable.
Yep. Not interested in the LGBTQ plus stuff.
Pretty reasonable.
Normal stuff.
Pretty normal things, isn't it? Really, that's not unheard of. It's interesting. You talk about Japan being fairly isolationist. I love to bring this up because I think it's I don't know. I just think it's fascinating. One of the only foreigners, one of the only gaijin that was well regarded in Japanese history was William Allen. William Allen, an Englishman. And he even has one of the only foreigners that was sort of welcomed in feudal Japan to such a degree. And there's I say temples, like shrines, houses built to him, statues built to him, and that's very rare in Japan. That's very rare. So I think the British. The British, the English, the people of this land, not the politicians, because they're all a bunch of losers. I think a lot of us could sort of empathize with the Japanese. We have a very similar culture. I like to think, all about manners, respect. It's not obviously exactly the same, of course. I think Japan's kind of ramped up to the extreme in some levels, but it's a very similar culture. We can step back from it and appreciate it all. And I think they've done such a good job of retaining that culture, nurturing it, protecting it, right? Holding it dear to themselves. And it's such a shame that they've just let in a bunch of Kurdish people, like Kurds. What you did? What?
Yeah. Of all people.
What?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Like, wouldn't you want culturally similar people? Like, what are you actually doing to yourself? It's suicide. It's cultural suicide.
Yeah, that's what a lot of the electorate are saying when they're asked in Japan, that they feel like this current incarnation of LDP is betraying them. It's betraying the values of the party, betraying the people, betraying the country. So this new party got 20 odd seats in the upper house. They'd lost their majority in the lower house, and they're back in October, and they'd lost a lot of municipal elections, sort of local elections, and now this one in the upper house. Loads of good points you made there. First thing, the parallels with Britain. Of course, Japan is in many ways completely alien to Britain, but in other ways, there's loads of parallels. We're like this island nation of a giant continent, and they always consider themselves very separate. They've got their own ways of doing things, their own ways of thinking about themselves, and all that sort of thing. Yeah, I did a piece of content a couple of years ago now with the parallels there are to be found throughout Japanese and English history, and it goes back all the way to the Middle Ages, centuries worth. I mean, you talk about they welcomed in that Englishman for a while there in the 18th or 19th century, for a long time during the Tokugawa shogunate. They just simply wouldn't accept any foreign people. It was against their law for a foreign person to step foot on their soil. They had one little island just off the coast that they allowed Dutch people to live in for a while, and they would trade with this sort of the Dutch envoys. And there was one bridge, one little causeway to the mainland, which was constantly guarded by samurai, and that's it. Yeah, it's as isolationist as you can get, pretty much, until the Americans, Commodore Matt Perry, not to be confused with Chandler, by the way, a completely different chap, in the early 19th century, forcibly opened up, sailed American warships into the bay and said, no, you're trading with us now, whether you like it or not. Like, your 19th century wooden junks can't stop our modern 19th century battleships from frigates from forcing you to do this. And so anyway, the rest is history. So now, yeah, the Japanese electorate, and again, the parallels now are extremely interesting, because many of the same dynamics that are happening in the West, in Europe, in America, Australia, are playing out in Japan. You've got this liberal globalist traitor class sitting on top, and the media, sort of their mainstream media, just trying to smear sort of the Japan firsters, just trying to smear them as far right xenophobes, tinfoil hat wearing psychos, when they're not. It's just they just advocate for what everyone thought until 2 minutes ago. Right, that's all it is.
I think so. I think we should watch this video a little bit, because it exemplifies that sort of media narrative, right? I mean, one thing I didn't realize, Senseito was birthed on YouTube, apparently. I mean, that's amazing. It just goes to show the reach, right, of new media. Party has also pledged tax cuts and welfare spending. Leader says he wants to expand lower house presence, so that's obviously part of their government representatives, isn't it? So let's have a watch of this. Music sound should play. Far right.
The number of foreign immigrants who don't obey the rules is increasing. People don't voice it, but I think they feel that. Also, the burden on citizens, including taxes, is getting bigger and bigger, so life is getting more difficult. I think everyone feels it, even if they don't say it. As I mentioned earlier, I think the biggest reason Senseito won support is that they are speaking on behalf of us.
I think it is simple. Everyone came to the Senseito because they were all sick with the current political situation. I think that the support for the Senseito has grown because everyone said no to the current Ishiba administration.
I mean, that's incredibly reasonable.
Mm.
How on earth could you have an issue with that? How on earth could you have an issue with that? Hey, there's a bunch of foreigners that are not obeying the rules and no one's doing anything about it, and we're all getting a bit sick of it. Oh, far right. You sick far rightist. I mean,
Yeah. Xenophobes, bigots. Yeah. Noticing that you've been invaded by a few million people that don't seem to have any respect for your country or culture. Yeah.
Also, kanji, Japanese, is one of the hardest languages in the world to learn. I do not expect a bunch of Kurds, right, who do demonstrably have a quite low IQ to pick that language up. What are you doing? So you're just going to have enclaves. Like, of all the places that's absolutely going to birth an enclave, it's Japan, because the language barrier is huge in Japan. It's a really difficult language to learn. And more power to you. Like, it's not a judgment. Crack on with your tough language. Keep your culture. Keep it. Brilliant. Please do it. But what an insane policy. Kurds of all people. What are you doing?
Yeah, it's funny. Their language, and they largely don't speak English, because you can go lots of places in the world, lots of places, even in Asia, and they'll often know English. Right. I remember going to Cambodia once, many moons ago now, and you could get by speaking English. You could sort of get by, but not in Japan. Not in Japan. Of course, their immigration, although there's a lot of vocal Kurdish contingent in Japan, a lot of their immigration is from places like China and Vietnam and Korea even. So yeah, one interesting point you made there is that this new party speaks directly to the people through vehicles like YouTube or just the internet. Again, the parallels there with a movement like MAGA, which rejects the mainstream media, fake news, and even in Britain, some of our, like Rupert Lowe or even Reform to some degree, try and speak straight to the people through like Nigel speaking on YouTube or whatever it is, because people just don't trust the mainstream media, or they're certainly not trustworthy enough to be represented correctly. So right-leaning voices sort of bypass. I haven't really got much of a choice but to bypass the sort of legacy lefty globalist media. Again, it's interesting to me that the exact same dynamics are playing out in Japan. You see the people in the crowd are actually happy. Like people at a MAGA rally, they're actually happy because finally there's at least some small glimmer of hope, some small valve for the pressure to be released in some small sense. And so yeah, I'm here for it. I think it's great if the Japanese can reject their traitor globalist elite. Then good for them. That's what I say.
I think it's fascinating, isn't it? It's an obvious occurrence that it's obvious that this would have occurred anyway to anyone with a brain. Flood the country with immigrants. They don't respect the culture. They're not going to do anything. People are going to notice, and it's all going to obviously upturn itself. But it really does speak to the heart of human nature, right? The globalist push for open borders and a globe where everyone's just interchangeable. We're all just numbers on a spreadsheet. Line goes up, that's fine. We'll swap some people over here. Line goes up, that's fine. It really does speak to human nature and the deep evolutionary psychology that we have. We want to be with people that are genetically similar to us, that are similar to our culture, that hold the same values, that that everything needs we desire that. We have to have that, and the response is the same everywhere this happens. Everywhere this happens, and it's only screeching genetic defects in left wingers. I mean, evolutionary psychology wise, like their brains not developed in the same way, you know. So genetic defects, probably not a bad shout, to be fair. I mean, if we were living in the wild, these people would probably get mowed down pretty quickly. So a genetic dead end, probably anyway. And those are the only ones screaming for it. You know, it's human nature to want to be with people that are the same as you, and you know, it's a safety net. But it just speaks to that, which I'd say find fascinating, but it's obvious. But it's great to see it play out and just have that confirmed that we all have this thing in common.
Yeah, a type of tribalism. It's deep down in our bones. Yeah, and as you say, that sort of globalist agenda forced on populations from the top down, coupled with, you know, anyone that notices it or says anything about it, it's just sort of, they just try to browbeat and bully and slur you into submission. Yeah, that's only going to get you so far. That can only work so far. And so, yeah, all power to Japan.